talking about breaking free of the food craving binging cycle. Now, I'm not saying this is going to solve all of your problems. A lot of times this stuff is deeply rooted into our subconscious, into our deep emotional capacities of human beings. Sometimes there's things tied to it that are personal to you, a divorce, trouble at school, stress to perform at a high level. You know, so this is stuff that you're going to have to kind of do some self-evaluation of. This is the general stuff. But generally, what we're talking about is for whatever reason, we get into our heads that it's a good idea to get rid of some sort of food from the diet. We have a certain amount of reward, then stress starts to pile up, we give in, we have a loss of control, and the solution we find is to once again get rid of that food out of our diet. So what has ended up happening is we're going through a cycle where reward and stress are constantly flip-flopping back and forth. When we first start off, reward is very high. We start feeling better about ourselves, we start feeling like we're in control, even though you're technically not. Because if you read something, like if someone says, get rid of a certain food, or don't eat this, or don't eat that way, and you obey, you're not in control. The diet's in control. You're not doing it based off of what you honestly think is best. You're doing it off of what someone is telling you think is best, which isn't a bad thing. You got to start somewhere. But ultimately, self-control is where you're in control. It's real self-control. It means you're in control, not following some sort of a dietary thing. But anyway, reward is high, stress is fairly low at first. Again, this is where people start to evangelize the diet, like, oh, it's the best thing in the world, it's so easy, blah, 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 reward is so high, but it doesn't stay this way. Eventually, stress keeps going up. Reward, you stop losing weight, you stop feeling better, and as this crosses, you start wondering, why am I giving up my favorite foods? Why do I have to constantly be eating nothing but nuts and berries, you know, this sort of thing. And again, stress is infinite, reward is finite. You're only going to go so far and get a reward, so therefore this will break. This is the big lesson, is it doesn't matter. People are like, well, willpower, that's like saying just go out and start running and never stop. You will stop. You will get exhausted. The stress will break you. This is not about you being weak or anything. This is about the fact that you can't run 7,000 miles without stopping. We have finite capacities to handle stress. And as I talked about last time, something that has this cycle, a diet or an eating method that causes stress on a regular basis is an unhealthy diet. It doesn't matter if it's supposed to make you live to be 102 and get you to 2% body fat. But when we're on this infinitely and we think, oh, I'm fighting these cravings, haha, I went to the party and they had all these sweet foods and I didn't eat any of them. We think that's a win, but it's not, because the stress is still there. The ultimate sign of a good diet is one where it gets easier, where the stress lowers. And so how do we break this cycle? That's the big question. This is not a chicken or the egg sort of deal. When you're in this cycle, you kind of feel like, well, if I do this, then I do this, then that happens, and these two are flip-flopping back and forth. How the hell do I get off this roller coaster? Especially, like I mentioned in the last video, it gets faster over time. So this cycle can last a few months, and then before you know it, you're doing it every few days to maybe even a few hours. This is not something where it's like, where does it start? We know where this starts. It starts here. This is step one. This is the only point in this whole thing where you may have control. We think it's like, oh, I'm in, you know, this reward phase, I feel really good, I just won't ever give in. You're not in control at that point. You may think you are, but you are not. This is where it's the conscious decision to abstain from the food stuff. So the first thing you gotta realize is get rid of this mumbo jumbo bull crap that is in our fitness culture, where it says you'll have a healthy diet and you'll be lean and healthy and stuff as long as you don't eat foods X, Y, and Z. This is absolute complete nonsense, because no aspect of your health, let alone the amount of fat on your body weight, is entirely controlled by a single type of food. Okay? Sugar cannot make you fat. Lack of it cannot make you lean. Okay? Same with dietary fat, saturated fat, trans fat, processed foods, organic versus conventionally, blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying these things aren't important. They are influences, but the key point is it's an influence, not a cause. Okay? It is entirely possible to have these foods that they're saying you shouldn't eat in your diet and never suffer any ill consequences. You can have chocolate and sugar and donuts and everything and never gain any weight. You just can't really eat too much of them. And that's the big thing, is when you are eating a certain way and you get rid of, let's say, bread and you lose weight, that doesn't mean bread was fattening. It meant you were eating more of it than you needed. It didn't mean you needed to get rid of it. So when we lose control, it's because usually when we give in, we eat way too much of the thing because the stress is piling up. So you don't have a bowl of ice cream. You eat the entire half gallon. So you feel out of control. You have a negative thing that has happened, but you had the negative thing happen not because you ate ice cream, it's because you ate too much ice cream. And then we strive for more control, so we get rid of it all over again, and the cycle keeps going. You want to stop the cycle, say, okay, I just won't eat that much next time. I can still have ice cream, just not that much. So the next time you're like, I kind of want a little bit of ice cream, have a little bit. You know, is it going to give you this massive, huge reward by abstaining from it for a few weeks? No, you're not going to lose a lot of weight. You're not going to feel like you're on cloud nine. You're not going to feel like you're overcoming these cravings or anything like that. That's a good thing. Because without this, this can't build, which means that can't build, which means that can't happen, and none of this can happen. I know it sounds very uninteresting, but the fact of the matter is the healthiest diets out there are the ones that really are pretty damn boring. They don't look like anything great. People all the time, they look at what I'm eating at the gym and they're like, your diet looks like nothing. Like you got a sandwich, you get a yogurt, you got a couple of chocolate chip cookies, and a diet soda. Like that's your lunch. Like that doesn't look like it's anything crazy, like it's super healthy or anything. That's the point. It's a great diet because it satisfies everything I have, gives me everything I need, doesn't give me any sort of like I belong to this type of camp or I'm a such and so. I just eat food. It's like some of it's processed, some of it's chemicals, some of it's sugar, I don't care. But the thing is I don't ever eat too much of anything. As a result, I'm always lean, I'm always pretty healthy, except for the cold the past week. Nothing really bad ever happens. And I'm out of this cycle. I don't give up anything. I never need to. And that's where we need to start breaking up this cycle. Questions down below. Till then, be fit, live free.